We can get started.
See, Committee Member Peterson just joined us.
Well, I have 7:01 on my clock, so maybe we can get started. Lizzie, can you start a roll call?
Yes. Committee Member Breeding?
Here.
Committee Member Fasoon?
Here.
Committee Member Larson?
Here.
Committee Member Merchant?
Here.
Committee Member Peterson?
Here.
Chair Chen?
Here.
Great.
Okie doke. So the next item on the agenda is the approval of minutes from July 15th.
Any comments on the minutes?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
I can second.
Great. I will do a roll call vote. Committee Member Breeding?
Aye.
Committee Member Fasoon?
Aye.
Committee Member Larson?
Aye.
Vice Chair Merchant?
Aye.
Committee Member Peterson?
Aye.
Chair Chen?
Aye.
Motion carries, minutes approved.
All right. So the next item on the agenda is public comment. So for anybody who would like to address the advisory body on an item that's not on the agenda, please raise your hand in Zoom right now, and you will have up to 3 minutes to address the body.
We do have one member of the public present. For that member of the public, if you'd like to speak on any item not on the agenda, please raise your hand on Zoom. No hands raised. Chair Chen, back to you.
All right. So the next item on the agenda is announcements.
Great. All right. Kicking it off with sustainability events and resources. First up, we have Albany Local Week coming up. Please check out our city website and take a look at our City of Albany e-newsletter, which if you're not signed up for, please sign up for that as well for information on Albany Local Week. We have annual Coastal Cleanup Day coming up this month, although we won't be hosting an event on the actual official National Coastal Cleanup Day, which is this Sunday. We will be hosting 2 smaller events on the 25th of September, one cleanup at Ocean View Park, one cleanup at Memorial Park. And although we are not actually cleaning up the coast on this Coastal Cleanup Day, we are recognizing that litter that occurs anywhere in our city has the potential to land in the bay. And we are focusing our efforts on our parks this year with 2 small cleanups. For more information, you can visit our website. And now I'm going to pass the mic to Michelle for an exciting update on a new program we should be launching soon.
Thanks, Lizzie. Yes, very soon we're going to be rolling out an induction cooktop lending program. So that's going to give members of the public the opportunity to check out an induction cooktop, one of the kind of single burner versions, for up to 2 weeks, just to give people a chance to get acquainted with the technology and learn about it. We'll be sharing resources. So we'll be giving you more information about that soon.
Thank you, Michelle. Next, or are there any questions on any of these sustainability events and resources?
I just had a quick question for I think the induction cooktop lending program sounds amazing. Is there going to be any cookware that's lent to people too, or just information on what cookware is appropriate? Just because I just got an induction range and had to make some changes on that front.
That's great news. Yes, we got a kit from EBCE for this program, and it includes an induction ready pot as well as some other resources.
And one of those resources is a magnet so that folks can test their own equipment as well.
What voltage does that take? Does it require 240?
It's 120 volts.
Oh, okay, good.
Committee member Peterson?
I had a question. So how is this being, will this be publicized in the e-news and things like that? I mean, or is this going, we used to have a tool lending library, but I guess we don't have that anymore. So I'm just wondering how the program will be publicized and run.
Yeah, I'm not sure about the status of our tool lending program right now, but we'll be using all of our kind of standard channels as well as reaching out to different organizations individually.
Great.
I missed, when is that going to be available?
It's TBD, but very soon, within the next few weeks, I think.
Oh, okay.
Great. Get ready for some cooking puns in our sustainability outreach. Okay, if there are no more questions on that, I would like to pass the microphone to our newest committee member, Mira Fasoon. I'll let her do an introduction of herself, but as of last night, she is our newest member of the committee appointed by the Board of Education. Mira?
Hello, everyone. My name is Mira Fasoon. I am a junior at Albany High School, class of 2023. I was inspired to join this committee because of my passion for climate action. Outside of school, I'm involved in numerous climate organizations, such as the Sunrise Movement, the Youth Climate Action Team, and Philippe Cousteau's Earth Echo International. And I've also done numerous things at Albany High School related to sustainability, such as finding my school's only climate club and also serving as the community sustainability representative. I'm really excited to get to serve on this committee and work with you all.
Welcome. Thanks for joining us.
Yeah, welcome. We're glad to have you. Glad to have student representation.
Great. Okay, next up, an update on council action on the Climate Action Committee 2021 through 2023 work plan. You'll now notice if you go to the Climate Action Committee webpage on the city website and you look at one of the bars on the right-hand side of that webpage, our approved by council as of September 4th, 2021-2023 work plan is on there. For those of you who weren't able to attend the council meeting, the work plan was approved with 2 minor edits. I guess technically 3 edits. There was a little bit of reformatting to put the actions that were considered one-time actions from the top of the work plan down to their listed one-time action section, just a little bit of a reformatting thing. And then 2 items were moved from one-time actions to potential future action, and that was to initiate a citywide fleet electrification study, and the other was to initiate a city building electrification study. That is what the council approved, and that is what is now live on our Climate Action Committee webpage. So I encourage you all to check it out. Any questions there? Seeing none, we can open it up to public comment if there is any. Seeing no hands raised, I'll pass it back to you, Chair Chen.
Alrighty, so we don't have any presentations for today. So the next item is discussion items and possible actions on a couple of different items. So yeah, I believe the first one is a proclamation of appreciation for committee member Graham Woolley.
Great. Can everyone see the proclamation on my screen? And let me double check. I don't believe Graham is able to attend this evening, but I will dive into reading his proclamation. All right. A proclamation of appreciation to Graham Woolley for his service on the Climate Action Committee. Whereas Graham Woolley began his service on the Climate Action Committee in January 2021, and whereas as an active member of the Outreach and Engagement Subcommittee, Graham supported planning efforts for a 2021 Carbon-Free Albany Community Forum. And whereas as a member of the Zero Emissions Transportation Action Plan Subcommittee, Graham helped develop key measures to reduce transportation emissions in Albany and determine priorities for immediate action. And whereas, as a UC Berkeley student, Graham made decisions informed by his invaluable experience as a student living in Albany. And whereas, during his term of service, Graham was influential in achieving the city's sustainability goals, including influencing implementation of the Climate Action and Adaptation Plan, choosing default electricity products through East Bay Community Energy, and promoting the Carbon-Free Albany platform. And whereas, Graham is recognized by the committee for his thoughtfulness and dedication to sustainability and for his commitment to making Albany a more environmentally responsible city. And now, therefore, be it resolved that the Climate Action Committee does express its appreciation to Graham Woolley for his service to the city of Albany and wishes him the best in his future endeavors. At this time, I will stop screen sharing and see if we have a motion to approve a proclamation of appreciation in honor of Graham Woolley.
I'll make the motion. Just as you've stated it, for the proclamation for Graham Woolley.
I'll second.
Great. I'll do a roll call vote. Committee member Breeding. Come back.
Aye.
Great. Committee member Fasoon.
Aye.
Committee member Larson.
Aye.
Vice Chair Merchant.
Aye.
Committee member Peterson.
Aye.
Chair Chen.
Aye.
Motion carries. Great.
All right, so the next item is an update on the zero emissions transportation project analysis of multifamily electric vehicle charging pilot. Wow, that is a mouthful. Yeah, so I believe I'm presenting a short presentation on this. Michelle, would you like me to share my screen and pull up the slides, or is that something that you would like to do?
If you want to do it, that's totally fine. Go ahead.
Okay, great. Give me 1 second. Okie doke. So I'm going to talk about the multifamily EV charging pilot program. This is part of a subcommittee update for the Zero Emissions Transportation Subcommittee. And yeah, just to dive into it. So just to give an idea of how we got to this proposal, we conducted 3 meetings to discuss goals, assumptions, and the approach. We worked with Michelle to align expectations with city staff, and we worked on a draft proposal to submit to the city council. So just to start out with the goals, the main focus for this program was from the Climate Adaptation Plan, which is to increase adoption of electric vehicles and motorized equipment. And I guess maybe just to summarize some of the discussions around this particular program, we wanted to identify and test incentives for multifamily building owners to invest in EV charging stations. The idea here is that if you are a renter in Albany and you would like to own an electric vehicle, but you don't have an EV charging station where you rent, it might be very difficult for you to do so. So we really wanted to put together a pilot to understand obstacles that the city is sort of uniquely positioned to clear in order to increase EV adoption. So after a lot of discussion, the central thrust of the proposal is to work with 2 to 3 medium-sized multifamily buildings. Medium-sized here means 8 to 20 units. And the idea is to partner with the building owners to provide a partial monetary incentive to assist with technical analysis and installation of EV chargers with roughly up to $15,000 per building. So this would include things like hiring consultants to evaluate how EV chargers would be installed, as well as the actual cost of the EV chargers. And the general process for how this would work, I guess the first step would be to gather feedback from a focus group of building owners and tenants. We discussed a couple of different approaches here. Initially, we had kind of talked about doing a survey or doing a more extensive survey, but we decided that sort of having a focus group would make the most sense. We would identify multifamily buildings that would actually install chargers at each site and participate in the program, award the actual incentives to the selected buildings, and then sort of along the way, continually gather feedback from the program participants on how the installation is going, any hurdles that are encountered, and results of adoption afterwards. As a budget estimate for the program, this is mainly just to sort of be a back of the envelope calculation for the sake of Measure DD funding. The cost would be roughly $15,000 per site. And an example breakdown of this would be, say, $5,000 for a technical analysis, and then a charge station cost of up to a $1,000 incentive for 10 chargers. So roughly 10% of the 20% of the total cost. So yeah, this would be kind of the initial proposal. With 3 sites at $15,000 per site, that's about $45,000. With data collection and outreach, budgeting about $5,000 for that. The maximum budget for this program would not exceed $50,000. And of course, that's not including staff time. So next steps for this proposal, discuss this program and make any edits if desired, and then hopefully recommend that City Council approve the program and allocate funds from Measure DD to begin implementation of the program. So that's the high-level summary. And yeah, I believe Michelle prepared a memo as well. So I'd like to open it up for discussion.
For questions.
Questions? Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, I have a few additional kind of comments and input. Since I was involved in developing this, I have put some more thought to it, and I don't know if we have the actual draft. I think the actual draft was provided in the notes, the staff notes. Is that correct?
Are you referring to the Google Doc that we were working
on? Yeah. Did that actually go out to all the committee members?
No, not that one. Just the summary of it provided in the memo.
So is the idea that we could approve maybe with some minor edits or additions, or taking this to council, or is the idea that we will get a final version that everyone looks at very closely out of this and then would vote on it next time we meet? I'm just wondering what the process is for getting this to council.
I would say that either of those are possible, depending on the kind of scale of edits that you think are necessary as a committee. If it's one or two minor things, I think you could definitely just add those and then recommend it to council with the minor edits. But if there's kind of more that needs to be worked through, then it might be that you come back next month.
So again, I'd love to hear what others have to say, but I have the feeling if they've only seen a summary and haven't seen the actual proposal, they're a little bit in the dark as to, just sort of the whole phrasing of the proposal. But anyway, I would love to hear what other people have questions about that didn't actually work specifically on this.
And if there aren't questions, Chair Chen, I'll defer to you when you want to open it up for public comment, but we should do that before discussion.
Well, it doesn't seem like we have any questions, so let's open it up to public comment.
Any members of the public, if you'd like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. No hands raised. Back to you, Chair Chen.
Yeah, so I guess I'd love to discuss the proposal with the committee, and if we feel like the proposal is generally ready to go, I would be looking for a motion to recommend that the City Council allocate Measure DD funding for this program. Maybe just a question to start out with. So is the scale of this program roughly in line with what members of the committee were expecting? And I am particularly curious about both the amount of funding per site as well as the types of sites that we identified for the proposal.
Can we get a reminder of how much overall we're expecting in this cycle from Measure DD funding, if we have any sort of estimate?
Measure DD, I don't know if staff wants to go into this. Michelle, did you want to address that? You probably know the numbers off the top of your head, or maybe Jeff, but I have them roughly in my head.
I think at this point we only have rough predictions because our finance director hasn't done an analysis of what we actually have brought in since the taxes started getting collected. So I believe the assumption is that after 1 year of taxes, I believe, Jeff, it's about 300,000 that would be presumed allocated.
I think it was a little less than that, but you're right. The finance department, I think, has the fourth quarter revenues from one or two of the utility taxes, but not, I think from either electric or gas. I'm not sure which one. Anyhow, they really have incomplete data. I think she's reporting that in actually to the City Council next Monday, but it's really incomplete data. I think it was 26,000 or something just for the first couple of months. Overall, I believe the expectation is once all the utilities get taxed appropriately and we're collecting it, we have a steady stream. It's in around $200,000 or $300,000 a year was the original anticipation. But we just need a little bit more time before we know exactly what we will actually have appropriated in the budget.
I'd like to add to that when the measure went before the voters, basically the way it was phrased, so we didn't have to get a 2/3 majority, is that the funds would go into the general fund with a sort of voter recommendation that and I forget the exact words, but the city council would endeavor, I think was the word, endeavor to take a third of those funds of the increase. There were already taxes on gas and electricity. It did a 2% increase on both of those. And then it added, I think it was 7% for water. I may be wrong with those, but something like that. So it was a new tax on water. So most of it's coming from the water. And that would generate somewhere above 600 and some $1,000 a year, of which 1/3, which is the 200. So I think it was like 680 was the guess. I mean, this was just a rough guess, and this was pre-pandemic. So, maybe uses of electricity might have gone up, down, who knows? We're now in a big drought, maybe water uses are going down. So it's kind of fluid, but the idea was somewhere in the $200,000 to $300,000 range per year. So we wanted to, as soon as possible, start saying, hey, here's how we're using it, show results, so that the voters could see that we're actually doing things to move along towards these climate action goals that we're looking at. So these all fit into our 3 priority endeavors, which are building electrification, zero emission transportation, and then a green infrastructure, which especially a focus on trees. So.
Chair Chen, do you want to call on people? Or I can if it's helpful.
Sure. Committee Member Larson.
Yeah, I was just going to say that I hadn't really said anything because I was on the subcommittee as well, and I'm strongly in favor of this. So just wanted the committee to know that, and that just a reminder that number one, this was part of our. This is almost directly out of our climate action plan. So this is really just carrying a predetermined climate action plan, initiative out to actual fruition. So that's a really positive step for our committee, I think. And we all know that renters are, number one, a large proportion of the city, and two, a group that is not in total control of their property. So I think this was a really smart move to start here and do a pilot in this area. So just wanted to voice my strong support of this as it's proposed.
Committee Member Peterson.
Yeah, I know it's kind of awkward in this format. I wish we were, this just sort of popped up, and certainly for Member Fisson, who's new, and I'm not sure how closely you looked at everything, but to some degree, feel free to say anything, because I think it's important that we share ideas and that we give our opinions, and no question is an irrelevant question. Really like to hear it. A couple things that popped to my mind. I know this is specifically a pilot project, so this is not a project and this is what we're accomplishing, and these 3 buildings, yay, we accomplished the goal. This is the tip of the iceberg on this is a tough nut to crack. And when you look at it, you think of all the existing apartment buildings in Albany. Half of Albany is renters. Some of them rent single family houses, but a lot of them are in these medium and smaller kind of apartment buildings. And how can we get them into zero emission transportation? Now, there are going to be other things. There's definitely a contingent in our community that want active transportation and would prefer we were getting these people electric bikes or something like that. But the initial thought was, well, let's study just the first thing, which is we want them to get rid of their internal combustion engine car. How can we get them to do that? And there are programs out there, and this is where the pilot project thing in my mind sort of plays in really well. We're not just going to go out and dole out a bunch of money. At least this is what I think, and maybe we need to put a little bit of this in because city council may have questions on it. It's not going to flip out a bunch of money and give building owners some free charge stations so a couple of their people maybe can charge an EV, maybe not. We need to analyze this a bit more. There are programs out there for moderate and low-income people to acquire electric vehicles. And we should look for the people that qualify that program and are interested in that program. So in my mind, when we said this is a pilot project, there's a lot of studying and there's a lot of work that's going to go into finding the right projects and trying to piggyback on other efforts that other organizations have done and incentives they provide. So I get worried if all we do is, if we have some rather upper middle class renters in a building where the landlord's making a ton of money and we just totally pay for something they should probably be doing on their own, we've not really met the requirements. So I think there should be a focus on low to moderate income people that are interested in getting rid of an existing internal combustion engine vehicle, interested in electric vehicle, and are willing to come to the table with something. That's the other thing is Albany cannot afford to pay for every charger in an apartment building. We go bankrupt in no time flat. So again, it's the idea that we want to figure these things out as we do these pilot projects. How much can we get for this DD money? How much change can we bring about? And that's what we're going to come up with. We're going to learn a lot in doing this. So it's like this first step, give it a try, see how it works. How can we incentivize it? If it looks like, we can get other building owners interested, they get incentivized, other tenants learn about it. Hopefully there'll be kind of a snowball effect and, we can get a sort of economy of scale and interest going. But again, if the idea is let's do something and, we got a little 50,000 chunks, see how far we can go, how many people we convert, what are the hurdles we're up, but we may find some things fail. So it's an experiment too, I think. And, any of the other people that were involved in this, Michelle and Eric, if you want to lend in on that, I'm not quite sure if we want to modify. I'm still a little wondering in my mind if we should maybe have a little phrase that says our primary focus is this, low and moderate income people that will get rid of an internal combustion engine car, leveraging and piggybacking on existing programs and also collecting data from programs that have been done in this specific area of multifamily EV charge station installations so that we can at least learn from other lessons of groups that have done this. So that's kind of a sort of broader sort of thought on this rather than we're just throwing 50,000 out there and hoping to get 5 or 6 EV charge stations in a few apartment buildings somewhere. It's bigger than that.
Committee Member Larson?
Yeah, I totally agree with what Committee Member Peterson said. And I guess I would just say that to add on to that, it gets a conversation started. We have to start a conversation with the community. And this is I think a good way, a good attempt. And like Nick said, it's a pilot. So it's a conversation starter. And the other thing is, practically speaking, it's going to be this staff, this Climate Action Committee staff that's working on this. So I'm not that worried about it getting hijacked, to some other purpose. I think adding some language in about the type of target customer is fine, but I'm not too worried about it because I think that, our staff is going to be carrying this out. We can't see who else in the city would be doing this. So anyway.
Committee Member Merchant?
Yeah, I do really like Committee Member Peterson's idea of adding in some language to that effect. Maybe we could do it in a way that's flexible so that would be the first priority of low and moderate income people who want to move to electric vehicles could get priority for the funds, but we wouldn't want to lock ourselves into that if all of a sudden we aren't able to find any participants for the program. So maybe just phrase it in a way that allows for some flexibility and implementation.
So I guess one thing I did notice from the program outline in the memo is there is a sentence that says the program will strive to advance equity and prioritize disadvantaged and low-income communities in the selection process. I guess, Committee Member Merchant, does that roughly capture what the concern you raised, or is there more that you would like to see there?
That does. I hadn't been able to locate the memo. I was looking on the agenda, but the format changed of the agenda, so it's not linked in the same way. So that's helpful.
Yeah, I'm going to take a quick second too to share. We did change to a new format, so if you are having trouble accessing documents, please email me and I can help. But if you wanted to pull it up right now, if you go to you can access it one of two ways. If you go to the city calendar and then click Climate Action Committee meeting, there's a link that says link to find Climate Action Committee meeting materials, and it'll take you to just the other way you can directly access it. The main link that leads to all advisory body packets. And then if you click on HTML agenda, it'll take you to an HTML web page. And on the right of every agenda item, you'll see either download PDF or view item details. But we can walk through that again in the future. But sorry, we didn't have much of a warning coming before this meeting.
Yeah, just as an aside, I guess we shouldn't really get into this, but I found this confusing, and what it removes is it used to at least have a hyperlink that said what it was. Now it just has these boxes that say download PDF and view item details, and you don't even know what they are off the agenda until you click that. So anyway, it sounds like you guys went to a different platform, and now that's pretty much citywide, so we're stuck with it. But I did find it a little difficult over what used to be there. Hopefully it's easier to put together on your guys' side.
No comment. I don't know yet. I got help this month. But yes, thank you all for your patience through this process. It's definitely going to be a bit of a learning curve for all of us. But we transitioned to a new system that's, from what I understand, more similar to what other cities are using. So it's hopefully more similar regionally. But if you have any questions at any point about this new platform, feel free to email them to me.
If it's helpful right now, I could share my screen and show that line that Chair Chen mentioned, if that would be helpful for everyone.
I think that'd be great.
Yeah, I think that would be awesome.
Can you all see this?
Yes.
So the sentence in notes right here. I don't know if you can all see where I'm showing you, but that's the sentence right there. Staff will work closely, or sorry, I'm looking at the wrong spot now. The program will strive to advance equity and prioritize disadvantaged and low-income communities in the selection process. So that's the wording that exists now. If you all think that kind of gets at the kind of flexibility that you're hoping for, we can leave it in, or if you want to edit that in any way, you can let us know.
I think, sorry, I should have raised my hand. Anyway, I think that does, I mean, it's hard to get more specific until we do the research and outreach and find the people. But I think what would be helpful is if maybe staff, once what I'm worried about is we'll go to city council and they might want something of more methodology to do that, but hopefully staff could answer that question. The other thing I was thinking is I've already gotten a little bit of feedback myself, and it sounds like there's a concern that we don't duplicate, which I'm not sure what that means, because Albany hasn't done this, and we're doing an Albany pilot project to see what Albany's hurdles are in trying to implement this, but that we at least learn from other groups, both regional and city, that are near us who have done similar programs. If we can learn, do a little bit of outreach and learn what they've come up with or their methodologies. And there might be a little research aspect to this, to just not go into this totally blind. And I'm pretty sure staff was probably thinking of doing that, but that's something that might be added in along the way to at least make sure that we benefit from efforts that have already been done.
Yeah, that all sounds really good. Michelle, could you actually scroll up maybe? And I'm not sure if this would be helpful, but perhaps it could go through the memo just section by section and see if there are any edits or any additions or discussion that anyone would like to make on any of these sections. So yeah, I guess the first section was just the recommendation, which is that City Council approve this program and allocate the funds from Measure DD. Is there any discussion that, or anything that anyone would like to bring up on the recommendation section? Okay, and then I guess the next section was on background. Maybe we could just leave it on this section for a couple of minutes and make sure that everyone has a chance to understand what some of the background here is. Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, and it says at the end of that second paragraph that staff present a summary of similar EV charge incentive programs and the cost and logistics of installation. And I think, Michelle, you did look a bit at that. It might have been really wide, but maybe we can reference back to this and just say, there'll be more outreach to gather lessons learned from similar programs in other cities and, either cities or by regional groups.
Is that something you'd like to add into the text?
Well, I guess what I'm worried about is that there might be a concern that we're reinventing a wheel where there's already, effort done that we can either piggyback on. Maybe what we want to say is that we would consider benefits of partnering and leave it at that, with partnering with regional and other entities that would help, that would be interested in participating or something like that.
I think we could include something about, reaching out and attempting to partner.
Yeah, what I'm thinking about is I know, like when we talked about doing a program for incentives for electrification of maybe making Albany's just, we'll just piggyback on Bay Rands or something like that, where we don't have to build a program. We can actually partner with someone who already has a program and then just say, if you're from Albany, you get an additional $500, and then we just provide the money and the program is already there. So I think council members are, they're always, their first concern is, does staff have the time to do this? And that's another aspect. Do we want to put anything in? I guess we don't have, at this point, it'll just be existing staff having to do this research and data collection and coordination with, discussions with building owners and everything. It's just our existing staff, correct?
Yeah, and as far as I'm aware, there isn't currently an opportunity to do something like you mentioned, where we would add funding into a program that already exists. That's something I could look into and check on, but I think it would almost certainly be something that's run by our staff.
Yeah, again, what I was saying is just with this pilot program, I wouldn't say that would piggyback. That I was giving an example for like the electric hot water heater program could be a piggyback, but could still be useful data from programs that have gone through a pilot. And we may find out that nothing has been done that's similar to this, and so we don't need to worry about it. But anyway, I just think, there's going to be a concern about, we're being as efficient with staff time as possible.
Committee Member Larson?
Oh, I was just going to say, below lower in the memo, there's a part about what staff will do, and the part that begins with focus groups, it feels like maybe, Nick, I hear what you're saying, but maybe we could just add in something there, but begin with focus groups and research into other similar programs or something like that, just to say that we're going to look outside of Albany. We're going to look at what has already been done, but not be too specific. Does that help?
Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, I think that I would unofficially, well, this isn't a real motion, but I would second doing that. I think that's a good idea. And that's a very simple place to stick it in without doing a lot of changes. Is just, staff will do focus sessions and also research other efforts by other entities. I had another thought about, I think the other thing with this being a pilot project, we'll see how much time this takes. Again, I see a lot of we have a lot of good ideas that this group has generated that have actually come, as Eric had pointed out, from the Climate Action Adaptation Plan, but they all can become rather time-consuming efforts. And what I'm seeing again and again, and this may point to us needing to assess what kind of staff time is required. And I wouldn't put it in here, but there will be a lesson learned here of what we can accomplish and what can be done with just the very limited staff we have on a pretty straightforward but limited aspect of the plan. I think when you look at this and take it even over the 3 focus areas that we want to move on, I could see staff being very busy for the next 2 years, and even if we accomplish great, wonderful things out of these pilot projects, they're going to be pretty minuscule as impact on what we're trying to do with the overall plan. So maybe at some point we need to have a discussion on whether we're adequately staffed to bring about the climate action and adaptation plan on the schedule that we've said we're going to do it on.
I had one piece of feedback for the background section. I think when I read through it, I was a little bit surprised that I believe that on a yearly basis, we review KPIs for different climate measures in the city. I found that personally very helpful for determining prioritization of different efforts and understanding where we were on a couple of these. And I think that we actually spent a fairly sizable amount of time in that meeting discussing vehicle miles traveled, and we had a little bit of a nuanced discussion there. So I guess I would have a recommendation of adding some of those KPIs, in particular vehicle miles traveled, into the background section. Committee Member Peterson?
Michelle, is that data we have? I mean, that's something we already have access to, correct?
Yeah.
I'd agree with that.
Michelle, could you scroll down to the program outline section? I know it's going to be tricky because it kind of spans 2 pages here. But I guess maybe we could just go through the first couple paragraphs, and yeah, curious if anybody has any feedback on this section.
Chair Chen, I'm not sure if you can see, but Member Merchant's hand is up.
Yeah, Committee Member Merchant.
Yeah, I guess circling back to what Nick was saying, do we think City Council is going to come back and ask us for an estimate of how much staff time this is going to take? Or is that something we need to estimate at this point? Or is it just that we would come back and is there going to be an iterative process with the committee around how this program is going? Or once we've approved it, it's kind of out of our hands? Kind of what happens after we get approval on it?
I think once the committee makes a motion to recommend any project, including this project, to the city council, it's in the hands of the city council to approve or not approve funding towards the project. And then the city council directs the city manager to direct department heads to direct staff. So the committee would have no role in determining staff time or allocation after making a motion to go to the city council for this project.
If I could add to,
oh, sorry, go ahead, Jeff.
Oh, I was just going to say, if, in terms of the committee's role, as we're working on pilot projects, I can imagine that we would be reporting back to you, monthly or whenever, whatever's appropriate, as how is it going, what are the issues we're dealing with, and so forth. So the committee would be, the committee meetings would be the place we'd be reporting back to you directly, as well as the community on the progress with the pilot.
Committee member Peterson.
So I'd really like to get feedback from staff though, and you too, Jeff. So there's a certain amount of effort, obviously, that has to be engaged in doing this. If we say to the city council, oh yeah, and let's say no one brings that up, goes to the city manager goes back and forth. I mean, if it comes to you saying do this, I mean, do we have capacity to do this, or does it then come back and city manager says, well, we can't do this right now, we don't have capacity, so we'll back burner it for a while. How can we address that potential without having to wait a month or two for it to come back like that?
Well, I think we'll be pretty much an open book about our workload. And, I spend time with the city manager every week talking about priorities. So if it gets to the point that we're not working, if it gets approved and we're not able to work on it, we'll communicate that to the committee and to others. We're not going to keep that hidden from anybody. And I think you'll probably find if we're not working on it, because we're working on something else that's of interest to the committee. So, I don't think it's going to go into a black box. I'm not terribly worried about this. And if we need to ultimately need to bring on more staff, then we'll make that recommendation to the city manager, and she'll take it to the city council, I would expect. This is a higher priority for the city than it was a few years ago, and I think we'll see staffing adjust over time accordingly.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, I'm kind of, I bring this up because I read an article recently where Ann Arbor, which is about, I think they're 6 or 7 times bigger than Albany, so a bigger city, but they've got a net zero by 2030, very ambitious, and they're doing $1 billion over the next 10 years, which I looked at their city funding, and they have $5 million this year designated for climate action work. So obviously they're not spending enough of city money to hit $1 billion, but if you read their report, they're planning on grants and all sorts of other stuff and leveraging and yada yada. But what was interesting was we're kind of coming in with bits and pieces and putting it before the city council rather than coming in with an overall kind of soup to nuts thing and saying, in order to get from here to there, it's going to take this amount of time and energy and effort. And I'm just wondering how, probably what would be helpful is when this is presented to city council, there'll be a staff report, right? And it should be in it'd be nice in the staff report if there was some sort of, this, currently, some assessment of current staff capacity to handle this. And I'm wondering if that'll happen.
We usually don't go into the details of that kind of thing at this level. I think this is kind of morphing into a different discussion rather than what's on the agenda. I'd be happy to agendize kind of our overall department strategy and work capacity. With respect to this agenda item, like I said, I think we can get a pilot program started in working with one or two property owners to begin with, and adding a third as we presumably we'll do one at a time, and we'll learn a little bit, and we'll do another one, and we'll learn a little bit more, and so forth. And I think we have the capacity with our staff right now to get started on the first one and probably the second one. And if it really takes off, then yes, we probably do need to talk about additional staffing. But there are opportunities to do that several times a year. So I'd rather not ask for staffing before we know the program is really taking off. My experience is that it's usually not as successful. You don't get a good answer if you don't have a program that people are already really excited about.
Yeah, no, that sounds good. And Lizzie, could we make a note? I like Jeff's comment about agendizing just staff time, because I see a disconnect a little bit, and that's not, I'm not saying Jeff's disconnect. I'm just saying sort of we've gotten pretty focused, and I think we need to do a little high level and talk about the whole aspect and what does that mean. So I would love to have that, put it down for future. Thanks.
We can put down, I think Jeff's proposal was to do a presentation on our city staff structure. Jeff, I see you nodding, but we can do that on the agenda.
Yeah,
we can fine tune that. I think Committee Member Peterson's probably most interested in the climate related staffing. And that's almost completely our department, but to some degree it might be in the Public Works Department as well. And we'll figure out what we call it, but I think I understand what he's looking for.
Great, thank you.
Moving along, I guess, Michelle, can you scroll down, I guess, to the last paragraph of the program details section? Yeah.
This one or up here?
Yeah, that down a little bit. Yeah, to, I guess, purpose and goals. Were there any other comments on this section of the memo? I guess one thing that I wanted to raise a little bit of a discussion on was I found it a little surprising that the purpose and goals section of the memo occurred below the program details. I think in some ways that would have been a little beneficial for me as an outsider to understand a little more the problem we're trying to solve and the why on how the program works before maybe having some of the details there. I'm curious if anybody else has similar feedback. Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, I was just wondering if this is a standard way to put these proposals together for council, where we kind of, wrap up with purpose and goals, or because I would tend to agree a bit with, I think I agree with Chair Chan that yeah, it might be better to hit that first so everyone knows what we're trying to do and then sees the detail on what we're going to do.
I'll just point out briefly that the council memos don't follow exactly the same format as the Climate Action Committee memos. So the kind of those minor details I think are less important and more just kind of the overall program description and goals and kind of the details of it I think are more significant, since it's going to change format anyways.
Okay, thank you for that context, Michelle. Okey-doke. Any other feedback for discussion? If not, I guess I can attempt to do this. So I'd like to make a motion to recommend to the City Council that we allocate Measure DD funding for this program with a couple of edits to the memo. The first of which is to begin with focus groups and research with other entities led by staff in the program outline section of the memo, as well as adding KPIs, including vehicle miles traveled in the background section.
I second the motion.
Okay, roll call vote. Committee member Breeding. Back. Committee member Fasoon.
Aye.
Committee member Larson.
Aye.
Vice Chair Merchant.
Aye.
Committee member Peterson.
Aye.
Chair Chen.
Aye.
One more try for committee member Breeding.
Aye.
Great. Motion carries. All right.
Congratulations, committee. Yay. Sending something to City Council.
Committee member Peterson.
Yeah, so if staff could talk a little about time frame, I'm sure several of us would like to be there when this is presented to City Council. I imagine it depends on the council agenda. Is that correct?
Yes, I believe the early October agenda is already set, and we do get instruction from the city manager who consults the City Council about how to set agendas. So we don't have a whole lot of say in when it goes to the council, but we will advocate for it to be put on the council agenda, and I can let you all know when that time comes. Sorry, Jeff, are you gonna?
I was going to say exactly the same thing.
Great. Cool.
Okay, so the next item on the agenda is item 6-3, an update on the natural gas ordinance analysis.
Thank you. I'm going to give a short presentation, which is mainly a repeat of what we touched on very briefly in our last meeting, but I'll just remind you all of the news. And I think last month you all just basically said you wanted a chance to discuss it in more detail. So I think that's what this is for the most part. But this is an update on the Berkeley gas ban ruling. So for some background, you all may remember that Berkeley passed a ban on natural gas infrastructure in all new buildings back at the end of 2019. And the California Restaurant Association sued very soon afterwards, claiming that the law was basically preempted by this federal law called EPCA, saying that, you know, it's crossing paths there. And EPCA is a law that regulates energy efficiency of various appliances. And very recently, a federal court released a ruling on this that was mainly in favor of Berkeley. They did find that the CRA had the right to sue in the first place, but that the ban was not preempted by EPCA, that Berkeley had the right to put that ban into law, because they basically argued that the EPCA is only regulating appliances, not the infrastructure, which is what's made illegal in the law. I won't go through these quotes, but you can just see them for your own benefit there. And since then, almost immediately after, the Restaurant Association appealed that ruling. And that appeal process, it's kind of uncertain exactly how long it will take, but it might be a while, could be up to a year for sure. And you know, it's definitely not a slam dunk case. Appeals are overturned, you know, pretty regularly. It's uncertain what's going to happen. At the moment, the gas ban is an effective law, and it will remain so up until the ruling is overturned, if it ever is. But up until that point, the city has been advised by our legal counsel to wait for that decision before pursuing a gas ban of our own, which is something that has been talked about for a while. But we've really been waiting on that ruling. So that's sort of where the gas ban is at for now. In similar news, we will be presenting to you on some proposed additions to our green building policy next month. So that's sort of a different approach that we know is legal to doing this same goal of reducing gas infrastructure in buildings. But like I said, at the moment, the council is to wait on a gas ban of our own that's similar to Berkeley's.
Committee Member Larson?
Yeah, thanks. Does that mean that Berkeley is now enforcing the gas ban in Berkeley, but Albany is waiting until the appeal decision is done?
That's correct.
Okay.
Committee Member Peterson?
Yeah, there are a lot of other jurisdictions that have implemented gas bans. San Francisco, although they excluded restaurants, so they sort of dodged that. Why aren't we kind of looking at moving ahead? We have pretty strong incentives for people to go all electric, but they can still do gas and we can't stop them. And, you know, if a development goes in with a large gas connection, that means for the next 50 to 60 years, it's going to be putting out carbon. So it seems really, I mean, I understand the city attorney wants to be 100% risk-free, and that's what all city attorneys do. And I understand that, but how did these other cities, and it's more than just San Francisco, I mean, Oakland has one, and San Jose did something, and a bunch of other cities have gone ahead, and at least they haven't done nothing. So I'm wondering, is there, can we look at what other cities have done and match that and then make it more rigid, like Berkeley's, when at a later date, and potentially be able to stop certain installations of gas from happening that we don't want in our city?
Jeff, were you about to say something?
Well, Michelle, you might have to help me with what some of the other cities have done. My impression is that almost every other city sometimes gets a headline that says they've adopted a natural gas ban, but they've actually done more or less what we've done, which is make some modifications to the energy code that in effect prohibit natural gas, but the headlines are a little misleading. And yeah, in terms of the city attorney's caution, yes, I think that is very real. And in a city like Albany, you know, if we introduce a ban like this and it gets challenged, if we win, it costs us a couple $100,000. If we lose, it's 2 or 3 times that. So, you know, it is prudent for us to be careful about taking on a case until we know that it's strong enough that not only will we win, but that people will not take the effort to challenge us, particularly if there's a larger city next door who's basically taking that expense on for us. So we're riding on Berkeley's coattails. That's a judgment call for our city attorney. That's what she makes those recommendations to the council. It's you know, I fully appreciate Committee Member Peterson where you're coming from, but in our role as staff, we have to respect her experience. And as Michelle said, in the meantime, what we have on the books is pretty good, and we have an opportunity now to tighten it up even a little bit more since we've done that work, and widen the scope of what's covered. So we feel like that possibility of a big project coming in with a big natural gas connection is very remote, frankly. But I guarantee it wouldn't happen, but it's a pretty remote possibility, we think, at this point.
One question I had, maybe for you, Michelle, is we've talked a lot about the Berkeley natural gas ban. I'm curious if staff has done any analysis into how much of an impact on greenhouse gas emissions in accordance with our KPIs of full natural gas ban, like what Berkeley has, would make on that KPI.
Yeah. So what I'll say is that, when we're talking about new construction, that's really pretty rare in Albany. We have much less than most cities, including Berkeley. And especially of, large projects, it really doesn't happen very often. It's every couple of years. So in that respect, it's a much, much smaller effect than working on existing buildings. And then in addition to that, if we were to be comparing the carbon impacts of a natural gas ban versus the kind of policy we have now that's incentive based, it's hard to calculate because, we'd have to try to make an assumption about how many people with the incentive based program would still go for gas. And we really don't know what the answer to that is. It could be that, no buildings choose to use gas anymore because we have our incentive program, and therefore the ban wouldn't have any extra effect at all. So it's a little difficult to calculate in that respect, but I think the big picture is that new construction in Albany is very, very rare. And so it wouldn't be making a major impact on our carbon emissions compared to a lot of the other things we could be pursuing.
Thanks. And just as a follow-up question, is that different for some of the cities around us that have implemented stricter gas measures for new construction?
Yeah, I think Albany is particularly built out. Much of the Bay Area is very full already. So, we're not like some areas that are having housing booms, but even compared to the very crowded areas in the Bay, Albany sees a very, very small amount of new construction. I live in Berkeley, and just walking around, I see several buildings that are, large buildings that are being put up all the time. And that's really not the case in Albany.
I see. Committee member Peterson?
Yeah, so, this is really just kind of an update on this, but at a later point, could we get more information or explanations on the further measures we're talking about for tightening up requirements to electrify?
Yeah, we're planning to bring that to you next month.
Okay, thanks.
Just real quick, I think we're still in the question stage, but just to note, we do have a member of the public. Just as a reminder, Chair Chen, whenever we're ready to call for public comment.
Yeah, so are there any other questions from the committee before we open it up to public comment? So let's open it up to public comment then.
Great. If a member of the public would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. No hand. Back to you, Chair Chen.
Okay, so I guess let's go through discussion of this item. I think that we've gotten a lot of information through some of the questions here. I guess one thing that I would like to maybe lead with is Michelle, really excited to hear about the green building measures next month. If it's not clear already, personally, I would appreciate any analysis that staff can offer on sort of the difference between what green building measures in Albany would look like with a full natural gas ban from cities around us, like San Francisco and maybe Berkeley in particular. Committee member Peterson?
Yeah, so just to keep this in context, by 2045, all gas will be gone from Albany. So at some point, we're going to have to start converting existing buildings to fully electric and getting rid of their gas. And, I know we say we don't have large buildings, but there could be a little boom coming along San Pablo once we open it up for what developers really want to build. And that's kind of the goal of San Pablo Avenue corridor plan and densification of that area. So we could have 2 or 3 of these large buildings going up. If hopefully they're incentivized. I know with the Saha housing and the Albany Bowl site, looks like we're going to get those, but who knows what will happen in the future. So the more that this goes in, there's also a lot of ADUs being built, second floor additions being built. Every time second floor addition goes in, they put in a new furnace, there it is. Next 40 years, it's going to be sitting there. So I think we're kind of, in just pushing back a little bit on this, sit around and wait for the city attorney. The city attorney is driving the climate action plan now on getting rid of gas. And I don't think that's how it should be. But anyway, that's just my thought.
Okie doke. Any last thoughts on this item? All right. The next item on the agenda is item 6-4, which is an introduction to the process to prepare an urban forestry master plan.
Yes, exciting. We've been looking forward to giving this presentation. Jeff and I are going to tag team this one. So let me pull up my screen. Okay, can you all see my screen? Great. Jeff, start off with you.
Yes, thanks. So what we're doing this evening is giving you just a really high level, quick overview of what we would envision a urban forestry or a tree master plan, whatever you wish to call it, process might look like. To give you kind of a rough scale of idea, this is something we think we would like to try to start up in calendar year 2022. The next couple of months are kind of busy for us, but sometime early in 2022, we'd like to start this in a more formal way. So there's the first part of starting a planning process like this, and actually to preface it, one other thing, what we really want to develop is a modernized program for our urban forestry. And that is, it's a collaborative process, not only of this committee, but other committees and commissions, and not only the community development department that we're a part of, but other departments as well. So there's a little bit more time and effort put into collaboration than there might be with other planning efforts that the committee's done in the past, such as the climate action plan, where you guys really drove it. But nonetheless, the typical process is we would prepare a request for proposals. It would provide an overview of a scope of services. We wouldn't attempt to nail down every detail because we'd actually like to hear what some of the service providers out there would like to, what services they and their methodologies they use that perhaps we haven't thought of. That request for proposals would come to this committee and other committees and commissions that are interested. We'd send that out, give respondents a month or two to respond, begin the review process. Typically, we create a short list of, the staff creates a short list of responses that we think are the strongest. And then we would create a committee that consists of 1 or 2 staff people and 1 or 2 people from various committees and commissions that might be interested, as well as perhaps maybe a member of the community that's the subject matter expert. Get a committee of, let's say, 4 or 5 people that would review the respondents, interview them, and make an overall recommendation. That would go to the city council. And at that time, we'd have a budget estimate from the consultant that asks the city council to appropriate those funds and authorize the execution of a contract. Those steps probably are about 3 to 4 months, depending on other things that are going on, and making sure that, if we get caught up in a holiday pattern or something, sometimes you lose a little bit of time. But that would be the basic process. And then we kick it off with the formal process. You can move on to the next slide, I think. And again, this is just a really simple overview. We might have select a consultant that has a very creative, different way of doing these things, but the three things that I think are really important early in any planning process and applying it to this type of thing. First of all, inventory what we have. And the second is to do some technical analysis of some of the issues that we expect to encounter, and some of the considerations that we need to take into bring into our thought process, and just get those cataloged early on. And then third, and I think very important in this particular case, because this committee has pointed out on a number of occasions, the voters approved Measure DD, and that may well be a source of funding for this, is to have a robust community engagement process. And there are lots of different ways of doing that: surveys, small group meetings, large community meetings, online tools. There are lots of really good emerging online tools. And last but not least, having meetings, having agenda items on at your meetings or at other committees and commission meetings, so that people can give their input in all sorts of different forms. My guess is that with the passage of time, the various online tools, workshops, and surveys and so forth will be the most robust opportunity for community engagement. Next slide, please.
Jeff, would you like me to take it from here?
Sure, go ahead.
Great. So Jeff kind of covered elements that are typically included in a standard tree plan and what our consultants that we would choose or that a committee would choose would do. But ultimately, what should be included in a tree plan will be policy suggestions, including policies to address existing trees in the cities, policies for choosing and placing new trees on public and private property, and general policy implementation planning tips. In which gets me to my next point. Implementation planning will also include considerations of our city budget and available resources, both for monetary resources and staffing time. Tips on how to do interdepartmental coordination, because this tree plan will likely span many departments in the city, including administration and finance, community development, public works, and recreation, potentially. It'll likely lead to updates to our municipal code, and then suggestions on how we can monitor and track progress, as well as upkeep the trees that go into the ground. Some of those implementation tools that I've observed in different plans are preferred species lists and restricted species list. What we touched on earlier in this presentation, given California's unique climate, we have water and soil considerations that we need to take into account because we want to make sure that the trees we are putting into the ground thrive under local conditions, and also make sure we're putting in species that achieve the objectives that we're aiming for from this plan. We're not looking to put in small trees that won't provide shade or other co-benefits from planting trees, but we want to make sure we're providing as many benefits to the community as possible. And then also protocols for selecting species based on site-specific conditions. So even more granularly, what kind of conditions do we have throughout the city that are maybe a little bit different? How is the soil closer to the water different than the soil that is closer to maybe the hills? This also might include, or implementation might include, suggestions for where to place trees based on equity. What neighborhoods currently have a large amount of street trees and are receiving benefits from that, and what neighborhoods maybe could use more street trees to enhance benefits in those communities. A few plans that I noted when I was doing some tree plan research as being exemplary plans are the City of San Francisco, City of Palo Alto, and City of Richmond. All three plans are pretty different, but they have some of those key elements that we talked about earlier in the presentation. Great graphics and a great focus on equity, community, and success. That concludes the slides we have available. And at this point, we'll open it up to questions, unless Jeff, you have anything to add to the end of that presentation?
I do. I just have one more thing to add, and I didn't learn about this until yesterday, but as it turns out, Vice Mayor Jordan has placed an item on the agenda for the City Council meeting next Monday evening, where he's making a recommendation to help expedite the planting of street trees by eliminating a fee that currently exists for the planting of a street tree in front of somebody's home. So if you're interested in that, take a look at the City Council agenda. I think it's been posted now earlier today. And it's part of, I believe, the new business part of the agenda. And I think his proposal ultimately kind of fits in nicely with what we're doing. I think he just wants to kind of jumpstart the efforts, and that's great. And then this plan would come along with a little bit more detail and build off of that first step. So as Lizzie said, we'll be happy to take any questions or comments.
Jeff, I have a question. So what would be this committee's role in the RFP process?
I would anticipate that you would have an opportunity to review a draft of it, and one or two of you could be on the selection committee, as long as you don't. We don't want a huge committee, and we don't want to violate the Brown Act. But beyond that, I would hope that one or two members of the committee would be active in that selection process.
Committee member Peterson?
Yeah, Jeff, you gave kind of a 3 to 4 month time frame to get the RFP out. Once we get the consultant on board, I guess I don't know how we would know, but is it a 1 year process of what they would go through? I mean, doing a inventory of all the trees in Albany sounds like it would take a certain amount of time. Just getting that out of this will be great. So, but you think there's about a year involved in that?
You know, there's two things that really take time. There's the analytical thought process time that the consultant goes off and works on stuff. And that actually usually isn't more than a few months. But there's an engagement process up front, and then there's a vetting process at the end, towards the end. And those are the two things that are hard to predict. And they're both super important, but they can take a lot of time. So if we find ourselves needing to go to this committee and the Transportation Committee and Parks and Recreation and Open Space, each one of those once or twice at the beginning and once or twice at the end, that right there is probably close to a year right there in those two processes, 6 months each, or maybe 8 months is maybe more accurate. And then in between those two is the analytical work of a few months. So the short answer to your question is probably a year to a year and a half would be a realistic time frame, I think, to prepare it. The more in depth we go, the more time it takes. If we decide we want to make it just kind of a programmatic plan and not go into as much detail, and maybe we don't need to inventory every tree in the city, but we look at pick 5 or 6 blocks as representative of the city, and then we use that as kind of an adequate sample. Maybe we can speed some of that up, but I suspect that there are a lot of people in the community who are super interested in this, and I think there's going to be some challenging issues, and I think it's going to take a bit of time.
I can add that during our climate action and adaptation planning process, throughout community engagement, probably 50% or more of comments about the plan revolved around trees. So I think that this plan will definitely be exciting for the community, and therefore we'll probably see a lot of community engagement. And to make sure that we create a plan designed for the community, we'll want to take time to make sure we're going through that process.
Yeah.
I guess another question for Jeff. I guess the typical planning for this, we were aiming for 2022. I'm curious with kind of the, it sounds like the scope of the RFP is where the general outline of how much is appropriated from the city budget for this program. I'm curious how that interacts with how we should think about Measure DD funding.
I think that is something that we haven't really gotten into at this point. Our department has a professional services budget that we use for a lot of different consulting efforts, and whether this is ultimately funded out of Measure DD or the general fund or the remainder of the general fund or some mix, and I should note grant funds. We will continue to look for grant funding opportunities to supplement anything that we do. I think this is a high enough priority that it will be our job as staff to figure out a way to fund what needs to be funded. I don't think we should, I don't want to waste money, but I also don't want to constrain this too much, because I think a constrained planning process could really backfire on us.
Any other questions before we go to public comment? Committee member Merchant?
Actually, mine is more of a comment. I'll wait until after we ask the public if they have any comments.
Okay, then at this point, if our member of the public has anything to say on this item, please raise your hand. No hand raised. Back to you, Chair Chen.
Yeah, so let's go to discussion of this item. Vice Chair Merchant?
I was just wondering if there's opportunities here for community engagement and whether that might be part of the plan. I'm thinking when I lived in San Francisco, there was the Friends of the Urban Forest, which I know is like a larger nonprofit. I think they're located in the Presidio. And I don't know how they coordinate or if they're a separate organization from San Francisco's urban forest plan, but there might be really good opportunities here for engagement, which could also offset some of the costs of the program.
Yeah, I think it would be great, going back to Committee Member Peterson's comment about an inventory. That might be something where you get a volunteer on every street to do the inventory on their block. This could be the start of I could envision an organization forming out of this planning process that people are really passionate about it and enjoy it can get together and become an organization like that in San Francisco that really helps advance the program after the plan is over, to make sure the implementation stays on focus and maintains the continued support, which is the key to this thing anyhow. It's not that the plan doesn't guarantee a successful outcome. It at least gets it started, and we're going to need a long-term commitment to caring for the trees that are planted, replacing the ones that don't make it. And we'll probably make a few mistakes along the way that we've got to fix. So I think I could imagine a really good, this could be an impetus for a really good community organization.
Member Peterson?
Oh, you're on mute.
I'd second that. I highly recommend people look at the Richmond Tree, which is a community group, does a lot to support the trees in Richmond, and actually were instrumental in bringing about, I think, their program success. And I think Albany is really lacking we used to have a tree task force, I guess it was. Is that what it was called, Jeff? And they did put together, they did accomplish putting together a tree species list, but we might want to reevaluate that now that we're headed into climate change. But I think as a member of the Climate Action Committee, I would be really, how can we light a fire under that? How can the city get that group started or support getting that group started, and maybe putting on some workshops or some tree planting things? I'm encouraged with Vice Mayor Preston proposing the fee elimination. That might encourage people more to step up and get a tree in front of their place. So I think our interest as the Climate Action Committee was to quickly get something there. And I like this process. What I like about this process is very thoughtful. It's going to give us a really good tool, and we'll do the right thing. What I don't like is it takes a lot of time. Trees take years to grow. The shade isn't going to be there for at least 10 years after we plant the tree, or 5 to 10 years after we plant the tree. So getting them in the ground is going to be important. Anyway, I just like that idea of that Member Merchant brought up about having a community engagement. If there's some way we could implement that or make that happen a little more vigorously, that would be great.
A couple of responses, if I may, Chair Chen. First of all, I think that we're going to continue to do what we're doing. Maybe it's not as much as people would like to see, but we do have an urban forester. He continues to plant trees, and the efforts that he's making will continue in the meantime while this is going on. And the plan hopefully sets the groundwork for a much bigger program in the future. In terms of community groups, I think there's both within the city. I don't want to over bureaucratize. I'm sorry, too many syllables in that word. I don't want to over process this because that can add to the time. What I think would be really great is to have a community-based organization that's not encumbered by the Brown Act and our schedules and so on and so forth, that can be advocates to advocate to the city to support these programs and volunteer to help with these programs. And maybe this lives within, whether it's Parks, Recreation, Open Space Committee, or this committee, or Transportation Committee, or some other mix, I don't know. But I think an outside community group would really be great.
Great. So today was just a preview of what we hope to be a continuing discussion, so we can continue to bring updates back to this committee.
Okey-doke. Any last thoughts on the Urban Forest Master Plan? All right. Our next item is 6-5, which is subcommittee updates. So I believe that we don't have any updates from the multifamily EV charging pilot subcommittee in light of the presentation. So yeah, I guess, do we have any updates from the engagement and outreach subcommittee?
Yeah. Go ahead.
Me? Okay. Yeah, absolutely. So the subcommittee is just me and committee member Larson now. So if anyone else would like to join us, that we're sort of in crunch time getting ready for the forum that we will be hosting on Thursday, October 21st at 7 p.m. And it is our community engagement forum where we're really hoping to draw together as many community leaders as possible to learn about how to engage with the Carbon Free Albany website, and hopefully bring the spirit around engaging with that website back to their groups within our community. And we're trying to take a very broad view of community leaders. It could be someone who sends the emails to all their neighbors on the block, or groups within schools. We're going to contact the neighborhood churches, and we're in the phase now of doing outreach. And so once we have the flyer should be finalized within the next week. And Lizzie, can we send that to you and you could distribute it to members of the committee so that anyone who's able to do additional outreach, because I think in talking with Patrick Journey, who's been helping us try and figure out how to plan this forum, the one-on-one connections with people and the direct asks of people that we know within the community are kind of going to be the best way to drive people to the forum. So we'll be asking all of you to reach out to people that you know, if you can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, please. I cannot distribute emails to the Climate Action Committee, and I think still, if anyone has tips for Laura and Eric on who they should contact, please feel free to send that to me and I can distribute it to them.
Committee member Peterson?
You know, I've thought for a long time that a real well-publicized public forum would be great, but are we still under COVID measures and this would be an online forum? Is that right?
Yeah, it's going to be virtual. So we're looking into ways to make it as engaging as possible so people aren't just kind of tuning in and turning off their video. And hopefully it'll be a chance for us to meet other people in the community who are engaged around this topic. So we'll make it as social as possible within the constraints of virtual forums.
I know that just trying to get people to participate, it's too bad we can't, you know, if we could have something at the community center with food, with some sort of other bells and whistles. I really look forward to the time when we can do that, because it's so hard to get people to show up for a Zoom session these days.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I don't think this will be the last time we do this, and so 2022, hopefully we will be able to do that. But I think that, you know, pressing on and doing it virtual is what we have right now. We got some good tips from Patrick about, you know, running the meeting itself and sort of getting engagement right from the beginning with, you know, the yin and the yang of this kind of thing is we're probably not going to get a huge group, but then that probably will allow us to give a little bit more dialogue, you know, like, what is it that brought you to this meeting? What is it that is your concern? You know, what's driving your group? What's really important? So we'll probably get some good feedback, and tying into what people are really, you know, keyed in about is a good way to get that hook and show them how the website can help them organize and track and all that, because it's so broad. It'll cover whatever anybody brings to the table. So I think it's got a chance at getting a spark with a few people at least. Yeah.
And the way we're going to structure it is the kickoff will be, so we're going to do the training or the forum in October, and all the leaders will bring it back, hopefully bring it back to their groups. And we're going to start a challenge in January of next year that'll run, I think, until Earth Day. And we're still working around what incentives might be available hopefully it'll be incentive enough just to participate, but we might have a raffle and a few other incentives to draw people in to participating in the challenge. And we'll also have, as a follow-up, we'll have sort of like periodic areas of focus, maybe each month. So maybe like 1 month, the focus will be on electrification, and another month, the focus will be on looking at the food you eat and household waste. So we're going to look into exactly what those different topics will be, but we'll give the community leaders some structure to engage with their groups periodically over the course of the challenge, so that hopefully they can stay engaged.
And I was going to say, committee member Bison, we could probably use your insight into reaching the high school community, because we know that if you can get the students active and involved, bugging their parents to get involved, that's a really good conduit. So we want to tap into that.
Member Peterson?
You know, I got I forget the name of the organization that made the platform that we use, but I got a correspondence from them recently that asked for some input and it seemed like they were reaching out and wanting to sort of spark a bit more, here's ways that you can get more interest and whatever. Have we reached out to them to see if they can participate and advise on that? Because again, I think the hurdle with the platform is it's a little wonky, but telling people what the benefits are, and if it becomes an informational conduit, which it kind of can, that they can find information on electrification and things that's current. So anyway, I don't know if we're planning on doing that or just keeping it a simple, just sort of here's how you do it.
I mean, Patrick Journey is part of that organization. So he's a really good person and we've talked with him a couple times about how to present the website. And there's a communication package that's quite tailored to different community groups that we have from him. So we're going to be using that as our help in developing our program. So. Yeah.
Any other subcommittee updates? Alrighty.
Probably make a call for public comment just
Oh.
to be safe.
Right.
Any members of the public who would like to speak on this item, please raise your hand. Quiet audience. Back to you, Chair Chen.
Okay, so our final agenda item for tonight is future agenda items, and there are a couple already there that have sort of been on the back burner for a little while, but if there are any items that anyone would like to discuss in future meetings, this is a great time to bring those up. Member Peterson?
Yeah, so I think we had that Jeff was going to do a little presentation on staff time. And again, my interest in that was not to know, well, it's how much time can Albany staff spend on specifically climate action adaptation plan implementation. And I think that would be good to get our hands kind of wrapped around it. If staff is going to be the one conducting all these activities and outreaches and pilot projects, staffing will quickly become an issue. So I don't think we need to understand just the portion that relates to our group's efforts in the climate action adaptation plan. Great.
Anything else for future agenda items?
I guess one thing that I did want to highlight at some point was that we're moving into the months of October, November, and December. For the last couple of years in the Bay Area, there's been a lot of extreme wildfire events that have really impacted air quality. So I would love to at some point discuss, I believe one of our work plan items was developing a community climate disaster resilience plan, particularly around hot weather and air quality events. I'd love to have maybe a summary from staff on what measures we currently have in place for resilience, and maybe just have that as an item.
Yeah. Sounds good.
All right. Well, I guess if there are no other future agenda items, we can adjourn the meeting.
Great.
Right.